Now that the dust has settled and that people outside of the Hollow Knight community have actually finished Hollow Knight Silksong, it is time to acknowledge the grim reality of this release, and that is simply isn't that much fun to play. You can like the characters, the art, the gameplay, the pacing, the story, like the bosses. You can argue that the game has like things to like about it, but I don't think there's any denying at this point that if you play Hollow Knight Silksong, you will not have fun with it because it is overly tedious. It is poorly designed. The map does not mesh well at all. You will get endlessly lost trying to find the next boss. And it just has so many weird gimmicky aspects to it. Like, oh wow, how do you find Nihilith? You go down an elevator shaft and then go over, back up it in another direction and then find a secret exit and then like what? Like, how exactly would you ever figure that out? I remember, looking at the map and like intuitively realizing that, like, oh yeah, like that must be where I'm supposed to go. And then, I found the door, couldn't open it. It's like it was so needlessly frustrating for something that was like that should have been so intuitive. And the entire game is kind of like that. It's kind of shocking how much of Act 3 is just backtracking through old areas, finding these boring, generic, uninspired. Like it's just unbelievable. Just what's how poorly constructed Act 3 actually is outside of the opening segment. Like, again, the entire game is like that. The Citadel is just in this awful location. It's not fun to explore. It's tedious. It's boring. Like, the structure of it makes no sense. Like, how do people even get around in there? You know, like, you have, like, all these weird just issues with everything doing 2 damage and just like nothing in this game being fun to fight, and it just builds up to like this cohesive whole where like the game just is not fun to play. And I'm beginning to see a lot of people kind of acknowledge that Silksong is just not fun to play. So if it's not fun to play, what exactly is the point of it? And I do think it needs to be understood more that Silksong is operating off of Dark Souls logic, in which the game isn't fun to play, but beating it is a status symbol. Beating Silksong means that you're a real gamer and that you're legit and that you beat one of the hardest games of the year. And you have to understand that, if you're not having fun with the game, if you're not enjoying it, like, why exactly are you doing this? Like, wouldn't you be better off doing something else? Something that you genuinely enjoy? Like Silksong, like the entire experience was just painful. There are a handful of things I like about it, like the Carmelita boss fight and um some of the story aspects, but like, overwhelmingly, like Silksong is just this monumental disappointment because at the end of the day, whatever positive aspects the game has, it is completely overshadowed by the fact that nobody actually has fun playing it. And I've already seen a lot of people acknowledge this. Even people who like the game. This was a great game, but I'm never going to play it again. Like, again, because like Silksong's entire core appeal is the experience of it, the experience of beating it, of like overcoming the nonsense and like beating the game. And like, I just don't think that that's necessarily the best strategy when it comes to game design. Like, yeah, you should want to beat the game, but you should want to do it because it's fun. You shouldn't want to do it because of a status symbol or because it's popular or because like it's just a new hot release. Like, no, you should want to play Hollow Knight Silksong because you want to finish it. You genuinely are having fun playing it. And for me personally, like, I wasn't doing it for because I was interested in it. In fact, I had every intention of stopping after Act 2. And like I would have stopped earlier than that if it wasn't because of just this idea. Like, if you quit Hollow Knight Silksong, if you say to yourself, I don't enjoy the game, I don't want to keep playing it, like what ends up happening, much like with Dark Souls, like people just accuse you of being filtered, like you've been filtered by the difficulty. And they don't really stop to process the fact that, your concerns, the fact that you're not having fun, like it doesn't even cross your mind. To them, like Silksong, the only reason you wouldn't finish this masterpiece of a game is that it's too difficult. Well, I did finish Silksong. And I will say that bar a couple of high points, like this game was a complete waste of time. Like it just wasn't as well put together as it should have been. And I don't think it's unreasonable to point that out. I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that Team Cherry could have done a lot more to make the game more cohesive. They could have had, a better story. They could have had better pacing. They could have had better environment design. They could have had better boss fights. Like so many people I know have gotten through this game by cheesing the cogflies. That's OP. They've already had to nerf some things because people couldn't figure certain things out. Like, Team Cherry, like, I feel as if this game was too ambitious for their skill level. Like, I think if they were able to make every area unique, if they were able to improve the color palette, if they were able to improve the designs, the combat, like the mechanics, like I think if they massively condensed like all the things in this game that did not work, like they might have had something here. But I think Hollow Knight Silksong suffers a lot from bloat. It suffers a lot from things that don't need to be there. It does not need the quest system. It did not need the tools. It did not need all anything in Act 2. Like Hollow Knight Silksong is just like it's just a giant slog, really, for no reason. And I don't think it's unreasonable for players to address the fact that the game shouldn't be this unintuitive. That there should be more direction, that there should be more of a plot, that you shouldn't have to spend 60 hours in a game that, people playing it for a second time will get through in like a third of the time. Like I've already seen people blast through this game in like 30 hours. Like I know people who have done that. Like again, much like Hollow Knight, the game's entire core gameplay loop is just padded and ridiculous because the game isn't as long as the playtime would have you believe. Because I can tell you, playing Donkey Kong Bonanza, that game was about the same length, about 40 hours, but it has like different environments. It has variety. It has a variety of, it has a lot of different mechanics. It has like different boss fights. It innovates, all throughout, like up until the very end. Like Donkey Kong Bonanza has so much more going on than Silksong. So much so that it justifies the $70 price tag. In Silksong's case, you're going through the same areas over and over again, desperately trying to figure out how to progress, and it just feels very samey and boring and repetitive and just frustrating, of you just going around in circles trying to find something that you can use to progress in the story. And almost always that something is something ridiculous that you would never ever ever be able to figure out without like extensively like experimenting with everything in the environment. It's ridiculous. And it does need to be called out for what it is that like Team Silksong is absolutely a disappointment. Like it should have been a lot better than this. And this is not a controversial statement. This is more something that I've been seeing a lot of people say near constantly, and it does need to be brought up more, is that Silksong, for a lot of people, is a great game that they will never, ever want to play again.